Frequently asked question: has thylacine information been suppressed? The answer to that is yeah. I think it's abundantly obvious thylacine information has been suppressed on various levels. Suppression means secrecy. Has there been secrecy around the thylacine? Absolutely, on various levels. And just as an example of that, I'll just quote 3 different groups of Tasmanian society. Now, if you consider 3 groups that I've dealt with directly, if you consider someone who owns a shack, say someone who owns a shack on the western side of Tasmania, in the past, before the 60s, 70s, it was all just a free-for-all over there. People could go over, camp over there, ride motorbikes, do whatever they want on the western side of Tasmania, on the western coast. Some families, local families, because they got sick of being in a tent in the bad weather, they built a shack on Crown land. And so there's all these shacks, and eventually the government said, righto, no more shacks, we're going to survey land around the shacks, and you can buy the land and you can actually own your shack, you can own your land, but no more shacks. Anyway, those kinds of people living in remote places like that are the people who are most likely to see a thylacine. They're out on their motorbike, out shooting wallabies or whatever they might be doing. They're the ones who are most likely to see a thylacine, and yet they know, you're not dumb, they know that if the thylacine was rediscovered in that area, you'd have World Heritage, World Wildlife bodies down on you like a ton of bricks. You'd have National Park, all the freedoms would be gone. Now, if you consider life on the western side of Tasmania, it's harsh. The weather's real bad over there. It's the most weather-beaten coast in Australia. So they don't want to move. The families have been there for generations. But if you take away the freedoms of those people, then it makes it very difficult to live in that place. So, so again, they're very sensitive about their freedoms being taken away. Now, do you think that if one of those people out on their motorbike, they see a thylacine over there in the distance, they're going to run to the Wildlife Service and tell them what they've seen, or the newspaper? No, they keep it secret. There's a lot of secrecy, particularly in the remote parts of Tasmania. So that's one group. Now, another group might be, say, a logger or a miner who happens to see a thylacine, who knows full well that if the thylacine was rediscovered in where they're mining, you imagine the turmoil that would cause. And certainly not even that mine, but future mines. Everybody knows that if the thylacine was rediscovered, you'd have great difficulties with mining, logging, farming. Say a farmer who owns backcountry that backs onto the wilderness, if he's up there tending his sheep and he sees a thylacine, he's not going to run to the Wildlife Service because the government will take the lease away, you see. So there's plenty of totally logical reasons why people keep secrets, and they do. Now, the third group that I would suggest has suppressed thylacine information is the government itself. And that gets into conspiracy theory territory, where whether the government would have an organised secrecy going on. Some people say, oh yeah, the government knows it's there and they're feeding it, you know. They're looking after the thylacine and they're feeding it. The government of Tasmania never once did anything to help this animal, so forget any idea that the government's there to help it. The government of Tasmania exists to manage the state in the interests of the people, not to protect a marsupial. So there's a lot of balancing going on. And governments, as everybody knows, will work in secret wherever they feel they have to. A politician's job is to manage the truth. And so, again, they're not dumb. Everybody in Tasmania knows what would happen if the thylacine was rediscovered. To the logging industry, the mining industry, the farming industry. These things are required, revenue from those industries are required for schools and hospitals. It's a balancing act, and the government will, some things will lose, some things will win, and the government of Tasmania is perfectly willing to keep things secret if it has to. There's been a secret government thylacine file since the 1980s, something like 960 documents in it. but it's not available to the public. One bloke did try to get it under the Freedom of Information Act, and what he ended up being given was something about a black panther and a poor quality photocopy of a dog footprint. That's all he got. And there is a loophole actually in the law, in this Freedom of Information Act, that says if something was given under an assurance of that it would be not made public, well then ever after it doesn't have to be made public. It's exempt from the Freedom of Information Act. So if somebody's giving a thylacine report and the government says, oh yeah, look, we won't share that with the public, or we won't share your details with the public, then bingo, it doesn't have to be shared. So anyway, there's an awful lot of information that's kept secret by the Tasmanian government. It's not a conspiracy. A conspiracy suggests a big group of people working together to keep a secret. The government is not that organised in Tasmania, it's not that professional, particularly the Wildlife Service. There's all these factions, there's petty infighting. They couldn't keep a secret like that. But what can happen is that particularly the boys club at the top can direct all their other workers to just keep this under wraps, because there's a monumental can of worms going on. It's just better for the state of Tasmania. It's even passed off as being better for the thylacine if we keep it secret. All right.